The night my brother's anniversary toast turned into the moment our family cracked in half, I was standing near the dessert table holding a glass of sparkling water I hadn't touched. I watched my mother dab her eyes with a napkin while everyone applauded, and I thought, they have no idea what's coming. Neither did I, fully, but I held something in my chest that night that none of them could see. Something quiet, something patient. Let me take you back to where this really started. My name is Claire. I'm 29. I work as a senior accountant at a mid-size firm in Columbus, Ohio, and I have spent the better part of my adult life being the daughter who showed up, the one who remembered birthdays, handled paperwork when my parents didn't understand the hospital billing system, drove 4 hours round trip but my mother had her knee surgery because my brother was too slammed at work to make it. I did these things not because I expected a trophy. I did them because I love my family. Or I love the idea of what my family was supposed to be. My brother's name is Ryan. He's 34, 5 years older than me, and he has always been, according to our parents, the one who carried the weight of the family name. I'm not entirely sure what that means, given that our last name is Henderson, and our father runs a small landscaping company, but that was the mythology we grew up with. Ryan was the one who would do great things. Ryan had potential. Ryan needed support. Patience, room to grow. I needed to be practical. That's the word my mother used when I got a scholarship to Ohio State and chose to study accounting. She said, "That's practical, Claire." The way she said it, it didn't sound like a compliment. It sounded like something you'd say about a sensible pair of shoes. Ryan studied business, dropped out after 2 years, moved back home, started 3 different ventures that didn't get off the ground, and married a woman named Stephanie when he was 28. Stephanie's the kind of person who walks into a room and immediately begins rearranging it. Not physically, but socially. She decides within 60 seconds who matters and who doesn't. She decided about me very quickly. I don't think she hated me exactly. I think I confused her. I wasn't competing with Ryan, wasn't loud about my accomplishments, didn't bring drama to family dinners. But I also didn't perform gratitude the way she wanted. I didn't gush over their new furniture or praise Ryan's latest idea or ask Stephanie for her opinion on things. So she filed me under not important and moved on. The problem was my parents followed her lead. It happened gradually the way these things always do. A joke at Christmas that landed wrong and nobody corrected. A family photo where I ended up at the edge of the frame. Small things. Then medium things. Then the summer Ryan needed money. He came to my parents first. I found this out later. He asked them for $20,000 to invest in a franchise opportunity. A smoothie bar inside a gym. My parents didn't have that kind of liquid cash, but they had home equity. They took out a loan. They didn't tell me. I found out 8 months later when my mother mentioned it offhandedly during a phone call, the way you mention you change shampoo brands. I asked if they needed help repaying it. My mother said Ryan was handling it. He wasn't handling it. But I didn't know that yet. What I knew was that 6 months after the smoothie bar opened, it closed. And Ryan told our parents the economy was tough, the location was wrong, the gym's management had been difficult to work with. My parents nodded and said these things happen and the loan was still sitting there, not being repaid, not being discussed. Around this time, my parents mentioned they wanted to do something special for their 30th wedding anniversary. Not a party exactly, just a dinner. A nice one. The kind with tablecloths and a set menu in a private room you have to reserve weeks in advance. My mother mentioned the restaurant. I looked it up. The private dining room for a party of 12 was $1,200 minimum spend, not including tip. I knew my parents didn't have that kind of flexibility right now. I knew because my mother had told me, not in those words, but in the careful way she'd been talking about money for the past year. So I said I would cover it. I didn't announce it. I didn't make a speech about it. I called the restaurant, gave them my card, handled the reservation, set my mother the details. She said, "Oh, that's so thoughtful," the same voice she used when I chose accounting. I told my brother about the dinner and he said, "Great, see you there." That was the full extent of his planning. In the weeks leading up to the anniversary dinner, Stephanie started sending me messages about the menu. Did I know if they offered a gluten-free option for her? What was the parking situation? She wanted to make sure there would be a toast and asked if I had written anything. I said I hadn't planned a formal toast. It was just a family dinner. She said Ryan was planning to say a few words. I didn't think much of that. Then, a week before the dinner, my mother called me. She said in the gentle voice she uses when she's about to say something she knows is unkind, that Stephanie had a wonderful idea. Since Ryan was going to be saying a few words, and he was the eldest, and family structure matters for these kinds of moments, they thought it would make sense for Ryan and Stephanie to sit at the center of the table, across from my parents, the seats of honor, basically. I asked where I would be sitting. She paused. We thought maybe you and your friend. I wasn't bringing a friend. I was coming alone, which she knew could sit at the end. It's the same table, sweetheart. Everyone's together. I want to tell you I said something sharp and clarifying in that moment. I didn't. I said okay and got off the phone and stood in my kitchen for a long time looking at nothing, the end of the table, at the dinner I was paying for. I went back and forth about it every day that week. I drafted a message to my mother twice and deleted it. I talked to my friend Dana, who said I should cancel and get a refund, that showing up was accepting the terms. I understood her logic. But there was still something in me, some stubborn, hopeful part, that thought maybe in person it would be different. Maybe my parents would see me walk in and remember all of it. I also want to be honest with you about something, because I think a lot of people in these situations leave this part out. I knew, going in, that it might go badly. I wasn't naive. I just chose to hope anyway. That's not stupidity. That's grief. When you love people and they keep disappointing you, there's a period where you keep showing up, because walking away feels like admitting the relationship was never what you thought it was, and that admission is its own kind of loss. So I showed up. The restaurant was beautiful. Warm lighting, white tablecloths, a room that smelled like wood smoke and garlic bread. My parents were already there when I arrived, along with Ryan and Stephanie, an aunt and uncle on my father's side, 2 family friends I'd known since childhood, and my mother's sister. 12 people total. Ryan and Stephanie were in the center seats. My place card was at the far left end. No one said anything. There was the usual flurry of hellos and hugs and compliments about the venue, and I moved to my seat and sat down and told myself it was fine. It was one dinner. The food would be good and the evening would pass and I would go home and feel whatever I needed to feel then. Then Stephanie leaned across the table toward my mother and said, loudly enough that several people could hear, "Ryan found the most amazing restaurant for this, didn't he? He has such a good eye." My mother smiled. "He really does." I reached for my water glass. Ryan didn't correct her. He tilted his head in a modest half shrug, the kind that accepts a compliment without technically confirming it. My father clapped him on the shoulder. I had made the reservation. I had given the restaurant my card. My name was on the booking confirmation, and I was sitting at the end of the table listening to my brother be thanked for it. I told myself it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Stephanie didn't know I'd handled it. Maybe she thought Ryan had organized it. I almost said something. I opened my mouth. Then my aunt leaned over to me and whispered, "This is lovely, Claire." And I nodded and decided the evening was young and let it go. The appetizers came. The conversation moved around the table, and I was mostly outside it. The end seat creates a natural distance. I talked to my aunt and to the family friend beside me, a man named Gerald, who has known my father for 20 years, and who talked to me seriously and without condescension about my work, which I appreciated more than I would have expected. Then came the toasts. Ryan stood up, and I want to give him this. He spoke warmly about my parents. He talked about watching them build something together, about what they modeled for him in terms of commitment and sacrifice. He said he wouldn't be who he was without them. People teared up. My mother reached for my father's hand. Then he said, "And I want to thank everyone who helped make tonight possible." He looked around the table. He looked at Stephanie. He looked at my parents. He looked at the family friends. He didn't look at me. There was a beat. A small silence in which I waited. He sat down. I don't know how to describe what that felt like without sounding like I'm reaching for drama. It was quiet. It landed quietly, the way things do when they confirm something you already feared. I pressed my thumbnail into my palm under the table and breathed. Then Stephanie said, "Should Claire say something, since she's family too?" The word "too" sat in the air in a very specific way. Not inclusive. Comparative. My mother looked at me. Did you want to say something, sweetheart? I looked at both of them. I said, no. I think everything important has been said. Stephanie smiled. My mother nodded and turned back to Ryan. The main course came. I ate. I talked to Gerald. I watched my parents laugh with Ryan and Stephanie, watched them lean into that end of the table like a plant toward light. I thought about the reservation confirmation sitting in my email. I thought about the 12 months I spent driving to their house, handling things, showing up. I thought about the loan. I thought about how, 2 months ago, my mother had asked me, just offhandedly, just between us, whether I knew what Ryan's financial situation looked like these days. Whether I knew if he was doing all right. I had said I wasn't sure. But I was sure. I had seen the numbers in a way I shouldn't have, not through any snooping, but through a conversation with my parents' accountant, who had called the wrong person by mistake, thinking he was reaching Ryan, and had left a voicemail on my phone about a notice of default. The loan my parents had taken out for Ryan's smoothie bar, the one Ryan was supposedly handling, had not been paid in 4 months. My parents didn't know I knew. Ryan didn't know I knew. I had been sitting with that information for 6 weeks, deciding what to do with it, trying to figure out the right time, the right way, trying to be fair to everyone. And then I sat at the end of a table I had reserved, listening to my brother be thanked for it, and I thought, when is the right time ever going to come, Claire? I didn't make a scene at dinner. I want to be clear about that. I didn't stand up and say anything. I didn't cry or leave early. I finished my meal, said goodbye to my aunt and to Gerald, hugged my parents, told them happy anniversary. My mother held my face in her hands for a moment, the way she used to when I was small, and I felt the full weight of loving someone who can't quite see you. I went home. I sat on my couch for a long time. Then I wrote an email. I addressed it to my parents. I told them, calmly and with documentation, what I had learned. The voicemail, which I had saved. A follow-up I had made to the accountant once I understood what it was. The outstanding balance. The timeline. I told them I wasn't sending the email to cause harm. I told them I was sending it because they deserved to know, and because I had been trying to figure out the right moment for weeks, and I had realized there was no right moment. There was only the choice to say it or not say it. I told them I loved them. I told them I had paid for dinner. That last part I almost cut from the email. I added it back. Not to be petty. I don't think it was petty. I think it was honest. I think sometimes the specific truth matters. I hit send and turned off my phone and went to sleep. In the morning, there were 14 missed calls. 3 from my mother, 4 from my father, 2 from Ryan, the rest from Stephanie, which surprised me because I would not have expected her to be the one scrambling. There was also a text from my mother that said, "Why would you do this?" Not a question mark, a period, like an accusation folded into punctuation. I sat with the phone for a long time. I understood the impulse to call back immediately, to smooth it over, to explain myself in real time the way I always had, to manage their emotions before my own. That was the old pattern. That was what I'd always done. Rushed in to fix the rupture, to make everyone comfortable, to absorb the blame even when I hadn't caused the damage. I didn't call back. I texted my mother. I said, I did it because it was the truth and you needed to know. I'm here when you're ready to talk calmly. Then I put the phone face down and made coffee. What unfolded over the next several days, I learned in pieces, through my aunt, through Gerald, who had heard from my father, and eventually through my mother herself when she called 4 days later in a different voice, quieter, older somehow. Ryan had denied it at first. Said the voicemail was a mistake, the accountant was confused. My father had called the accountant directly. The numbers were confirmed. The default was real. 4 months of missed payments on a loan my parents had taken against their house, a loan they had never mentioned to me, a loan Ryan had been carrying in silence while my father clapped him on the shoulder at anniversary dinners. Stephanie had not handled the revelation gracefully. There had been, according to my aunt, who delivered this information with the careful neutrality of someone who loves both parties, a significant argument. Several significant arguments. The kind that reopens other conversations you thought were closed. My mother cried a lot during our phone call. I let her. I didn't rush it or redirect it. She said, "I didn't know, Claire." I said, "I know you didn't." She said, "I think we haven't been fair to you." I said, "I think that's true." She was quiet. Then she said, "I kept thinking you were fine. You always seemed fine." And I thought about how much work goes into seeming fine. How many mornings I drove 4 hours round trip and came home and made dinner and answered work emails and seemed fine. How fine can become its own kind of invisibility. I said, "I needed you to see me, not just rely on me. There's a difference." She didn't have an answer for that. I didn't expect her to. These things don't resolve in one phone call. They're not meant to. My father called 2 days after that. He apologized more directly. My father is, despite everything, a more straightforward person when his back is against the wall. He said he had let Ryan's situation go on too long and had let me be taken for granted, and he was sorry. He said it like he meant it. I believe he did. Ryan texted me once. The message said, "You really had to do it like that?" I read it 3 times. I wrote back, "Yes." I haven't heard from him since. I don't know what he and Stephanie are working through, and I have realized that's not mine to manage. For a long time, I had been quietly absorbing the weight of everyone else's choices, driving to fill the gaps Ryan left, paying for things that would never carry my name, carrying knowledge that protected people who hadn't thought to protect me. That's a particular kind of exhaustion, the kind you don't notice until you put it down. Stephanie called once, late on a Wednesday night. I didn't answer. She didn't leave a voicemail. A few weeks later, my mother asked if I would come to Sunday dinner. Not a special occasion, just dinner. I said I would think about it. She said she understood. We talked for 40 minutes about other things. Her neighbor's new dog, a book she'd been reading, a recipe she wanted to try. It was the most ordinary conversation we'd had in years. There was something fragile in it, something neither of us pushed too hard on. I think we were both learning how to be careful with each other in a new way. I haven't decided yet how much to rebuild and how quickly. I think that's allowed. I think the decision doesn't have to be made in one sitting. What I know is this. I don't regret sending the email. I don't regret paying for the dinner. I don't regret showing up, even to the end of the table, because showing up was not the mistake. The mistake would have been continuing to show up while pretending everything was fine, while absorbing the weight of it silently, while waiting for a right moment that no one was going to hand me. Sometimes the right moment is the one you make. Gerald sent me a message after everything settled. He said he'd heard some of what happened, and that for what it was worth, he'd always seen me clearly at every family gathering he'd ever attended. He said good people often go underestimated by the people who need them most. I read it on a Tuesday morning before work and sat with it for a minute before I replied. It meant more than he knew. Before I tell you what I decided about that Sunday dinner, let me ask you something. Where are you listening from today? Drop it in the comments. I find myself thinking about all the different rooms this story lands in, all the different people who know exactly what it feels like to sit at the end of a table you set yourself. My mother made pot roast the Sunday I finally went back. Nothing was resolved. Nothing was magically healed. My father passed me the bread first, which is a small thing, and then looked at me in a way that meant something, and I accepted it for what it was, a beginning, not an ending. Ryan wasn't there. That particular conversation is still ahead of us somewhere. Maybe, I don't know yet if I'm ready for it or if ready is even the right frame. Some relationships need distance before they can be rebuilt. Some need to be rebuilt into something different than what they were. Some don't get rebuilt at all, and that grief is real, and it's allowed. What I know is that I am no longer managing the silence. I am no longer making myself small to keep the peace. I am no longer arriving at the table as an afterthought and pretending the placement doesn't matter. I carried something into that anniversary dinner that none of them could see. Not bitterness, not a plan, just the truth. And I waited until I knew exactly where to set it down. If this story stayed with you, hit like. It genuinely helps this channel reach people who need to hear it. And if you know someone sitting at the end of their own table right now, send this to them. They'll know what it means.